Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives, happening every day at 12 on ebizradio.com. Joining me for the Lunchtime Coaching segment today, we have the founder and CEO of Be Agile, a boutique consulting company that prides itself in guiding and enabling their clients to thrive in a highly disruptive and evolving world. Myles Hopkins. Hello, Myles. How are you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kevin. Great to be on your show. I'm really looking forward to today's session, and looking forward to just sharing some of my thoughts, and thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Absolutely. Myles, don't you want to kick it off and just give some people some insights? Your company's Be Agile, and tell them who you are, but also, give us a bit of a preface around what we are talking about today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Kevin. So as you introduced Be Agile, we're a smallish consulting company based out of Johannesburg in South Africa, but we operate across the African continent, in the UAE. We also about to do some work in China. We have a client in Sri Lanka. So pretty much global in our reach. We have some of the most qualified and experienced agilists, as we call them, in our team. And we really look at helping our customers deliver real value to their customers, as well as to their shareholders, their employees, their community. And Agile has been around for a while now, so we're particularly talking about Agile. So the Agile Manifesto was signed in Boulder, Colorado, I forget the place name, but it was signed in Colorado in 2001. It was by a number of software developers who got together and said, there must be a better way of developing software than the traditional, what we call waterfall project management approach. So it's been around for 21 years, but it has really progressed into not just being around software development and for technology companies and IT departments, much more into the realm of what we call business agility, which is what we focus on. And we help, again, our clients right through the value chain, from HR, finance, IT, things like digital transformation, automation, etc., right across the board, to literally, if I can put it this way, to literally deliver products, valuable products and solutions to their clients quicker than their competitors are. So today it's not so much big eats small anymore. It's fast eats slow. You can understand their customers quicker than their competitors, and who can get the products and solutions out to the competitors. To the customers faster than the competitors. So we focus on that. There's a lot of, if I can say, there's been a lot of companies that have gone the Agile route and haven't had the results they've wanted to. And that's because they see it as a framework and a methodology, whereas we push it as a mindset. It's much more about, having the right mindset about being adaptive and being agile than it is necessarily about following a framework and a methodology.
I mean, it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because, I know a bit of, Agile and certified as a Scrum Master. So I have, a bit of background around it, but I think a lot of people still have that approach that, and maybe I think it is shifting, but I think a lot of people still have that approach that Agile is for an IT kind of based business, or product software solutions. Is that the case? Is Agile only an IT thing, a software thing?
It's definitely not. Kevin, I think, Evan Laybourne, who's the head of the Business Agility Institute in Australia, will say you can only be as agile as your least agile department. So let's say, for example, you're really going to find that a lot of the focus on delivering products and solutions sits within the IT technology, digital transformation space. But let's say, like we consult to a number of HR departments and some finance departments. And when we go to them and talk about Agile, we said it's not so much about you using the Agile framework and methodology and principles within your own department, but rather how do you enable the rest of the business to be Agile? And if I can use the HR as an example. In Agile, we start talking more about how teams deliver work than around individuals. We talk about networked, self-regulating teams and virtual structures. We talk about different ways of performance managing. So one of the challenges we find with that, with a lot of customers, is that HR still has this very traditional way of doing performance management, org design, reward and recognition, career development. But if they don't change, if they've almost got to unlearn all of that stuff and almost do a 180-degree turn in some of these instances to actually enable those knowledge workers that are working within the business, that are doing the agile development of solutions and products, to liberate that sort of teamwork and that collaboration. Because it's very easy for me to say you need to work together as a team, but if I'm incentivizing you as an individual, you're going to work as an individual, not as a team. And one of the big principles is Agile is working in these collaborative teams. Just to use finance as an example as well, you know what it's like with finance in many organizations. We have this very strict budget that we set once a year, and you've almost got to move heaven and earth to move out of that budget. What we wanting to do is see finance move towards more of an adaptive budgeting strategy, which what I say to finance CFOs is, you don't necessarily, I don't want you to spend any more. If you budgeted to spend 100 million Rand this year, I'm not going to ask you to spend more than 100 million Rand. But what I am going to ask you to do is, if this one product that we're developing needs more money now and another one needs less money, then let's move the money across from the one that doesn't need all of that money anymore to the one that needs a bit more money. So let's be a bit more adaptive about the way we use that money. It's not about necessarily spending more money. And, you could take each department in a traditional company and say, there's very much ways that they enable the agility of an organization to be faster and speed to market, etc.
Yeah, as you're speaking, Myles, I'm thinking, what's really interesting is, and not to have a COVID conversation, but to have an importance of agility conversation, that COVID has really, obviously for you guys, pushed this button, right? People are companies, decision makers are really starting to grasp the importance of why having an agile approach to their businesses and to their structures are really, really important, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. What we, prior to COVID-19, for us to get a client to buy into the whole agile concept, we either had to have a CEO that truly believed it and wanted to drive that within her or his business, or we needed a company that had a burning platform. Now, of course, COVID-19 created a burning platform for every single company in the globe, because we suddenly had a scenario we were not prepared for, even though we should have been prepared for it, by the way. As I always talk on some of my webinars, Bill Gates warned us about something like COVID-19 in 2015. He told us that we would have a pandemic in the next 5 years that would bring the world economy to its knees. And of course, we don't learn from these things. We wait until they happen and then we get ready. But so yeah, definitely, just even to think of our own small business, when Cyril Ramaphosa announced the very first lockdown in March last year, literally overnight, we lost every single bit of business that we had. So all of our consulting gigs, all of our training workshops, etc., that we had lined up was gone overnight. But we realized that we also had to, even though we teach this adaptability and this agility, that in the medium to long term, it would be much better for us, because now companies suddenly realized that they had to move in this direction. And we also had to change the way we did things. So instead of us doing in-person workshops, instead of us doing in-person consulting, it's now all online. And oddly enough, I didn't believe it would happen this way, but for some of our workshops, we're actually getting better ratings for the workshops now that they're online than they were in person. And last year, towards the end of last year, I finished a contract with one of my clients on consulting, having never met them face to face. the one thing I wanted to just also talk, one of the examples I use quite often, and this is to do with COVID-19 and what true agility is about, rather than following necessarily a framework, is around about again March last year, I saw a little insert on CNN about a brewery in the USA. Obviously, they've been, doing their beer and whatever it is, and they very quickly realized that there was going to be a massive need for sanitizers and disinfectants. So they changed their product line from from beer to sanitizers, because it's pretty much, they're using the same machinery, and they've done exceptionally well. So to me, that's agility. When you're able to anticipate and adapt to what's happening in your market, and realize, the changes that are going to happen and how you need to change to be relevant into the future.
Yeah, I mean, one of the companies that come to mind was MultiChoice. When they had the disruption around with Netflix, they really need to, they needed to kind of step up their game. And if they didn't have this approach, and they didn't kind of go, okay, well, what about if we create an online platform? And Showmax suddenly appeared, and suddenly that proves a practical point as well. To exactly what you mentioned. But what I want to touch on here as well, Myles, I think there's a big, and I mean, to a certain degree, I also have this perception of agility and the agile approach, is there is a framework and there is a mindset. And if you can't match these two, and you can't go, as much as there is a framework to follow, a lot of the success to taking an agile approach is setting up your mindset to support that, and the environment that you're working on. How do you bring those two together? Because I think there is still a disconnect for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely a big disconnect. So by the way, Kevin, there's over 80 different agile frameworks out there, and it's big business. So, for example, my company, we prefer the scaled agile, which is commonly referred to as SAFe. But Chad and I, Chad is the most certified. He's one of my business partners. He's the most certified and qualified SAFe professional in Africa and the Middle East. We always say we don't drink the Kool-Aid. We see it's got a fantastic framework. It really works well, but it's also not for every type of business. But if you're going to take this as by paint by number scenario and say, okay, SAFe says I need to do this, or any of the other frameworks like LESS or DAD or Kanban or whatever it is, if you're going to take it by paint framework, that's what we call doing agile. Okay, doing agile is following a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
And that's also the reason for the name of our company. It's more important about being agile. So it's about that mindset. It's about that ability to, again, like we talk about, that anticipate and adapt. It's about what we call, speed to market. How do we get there quicker than others? And what we find often downplays the success of an agile transformation. There's many companies that have had large successes, but there's most probably more companies that have failed at it because they didn't have the mindset right. They thought, okay, so I'm following the SAFe recipe, so therefore I should just become more agile. However, they're not changing so one of the, and I'll just use one example here. One of the things we talk about in agility is servant leaders. So your leaders must move away from command and control to become servant leaders. And there's a number of things around it. And companies will do that. They'll say to their leaders, from now on, you need to be a servant leader. But they, first of all, don't quite tell them what that means. They also don't develop them to become servant leaders. But most importantly, they still incentivize them around the command and control outcomes, not around the servant leadership outcomes. So if you're incentivized with your bonuses around something, that's what you're going to drive as an individual. So that's where the mindset again needs to come in. Simon Sinek, who I think most people on your show will have possibly heard of, also talks about the infinite. So we talk about a growth mindset in Agile versus a fixed mindset. And a growth mindset means well, maybe I can't today, but if I learn enough, I'll be able to tomorrow. And it's about innovation. It's about continuous learning. But Simon talks about an infinite mindset, which is saying it's even more than that, because you spoke about multi-choice, and I often use the example of banks in Africa. So in South Africa, we've got, let's say now, I always call it 4.5 big banks, because Capitec's becoming a big bank. So let's call them 5 big banks. If they only considering what each of those other 4 competitors do, and that's how they put together their strategy, they're actually going to be on a bit of a losing battle down the long term. Because when you think about it, 80% of Africa's population is unbanked. That means they're not using any of these 5 banks in South Africa. And we're seeing a whole lot of innovation that's been going on for years with things like M-Pesa in Kenya and East Africa. Other payment gateways that are being created that allow people to transact financially without having to be part of a big bank. So your competitors are not the other four big banks. They are, but they're also these hundreds and hundreds of smaller fintechs that are coming, that you don't even know exist, that are coming to take your bread and breakfast as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you did mention, Myles, is the agile might not be for everyone. You know, so how do you, is it a case that people just need to actually get on board with this already and start taking this approach? Or is it a case that it definitely works for certain companies, certain industry, and some industry it's just, you know, it's just not going to work? Or like, what is that?
A great question. So that's also, and I want to take it a bit further than that as well. So let's talk about the industry side first. So my immediate, because I've worked within the mining industry, I've had a number of mining clients before. So when we're digging, you know, when we're developing, you know, with what they call face within the mine, blasting, etc., etc., etc. I'm not sure that you know, doing 2-week sprints on that is necessarily going to help, or whatever it is. But so in a mining context, we can learn some great lessons from Agile. But it's not necessarily that we're going to apply Agile framework to doing mining. However, what we are seeing in mines is that there's a lot more move towards automation within the mine. So then you're going to have a technology department within the mining company working on these automation tools, and they would use Agile in the way that they develop the tools to make the mining more automated. But within mining per se, not so. I think the speed to market still makes a big play, because let's talk about the construction industry, which is also not an industry that's necessarily set up for Agile. However, again, about probably 18 months, 2 years ago, I saw a program on a Chinese construction company that builds massive buildings, and they have reduced their time from you know, starting the building to the end of the building, finishing the building, from 2 years to 6 months. That wasn't using an Agile approach. That was just because now they build almost this modularized building in a factory, and then come Lego, put it in like Lego blocks and build it out, and it's brought it down. So that speed to market has given them a massive you know, impact in the way that they are able to bring in clients, but they didn't necessarily use an Agile methodology for that. They just used a growth mindset. And then if I can just touch on this briefly, even within a company, so we've got big companies that we work with, and some of them, Agile is not necessarily the right thing for that part of the business. You know, at the end of the day, call centers, yes, you can bring again some of the principles in, but we're not necessarily going to again do 2-week sprints. So even within businesses, you're going to have some parts of the business that are running true Agile, whereas other parts of the business should be running speed to market first concept, but also then enabling Agile. And then the last thing I want to say around that is this now even further complicates HR's job, because now not only do they have to think about how do I rejig all of the policies, procedures, rewards, practices for the Agile part of the business, but I still got another part of the business that's going to be running differently, another part of the business running. So now I have to have 3, maybe 4 reward structures for different parts of the business. So that creates some complexity, but if you understand what that complexity is ahead of time and you plan for it, it's easy complexity to manage in a way.
Yeah, I find it so interesting. One of the people I follow in business and forward thinking is I don't know if you know him. His name is Vusi Thembekwayo. He amazing entrepreneur and does amazing things in South Africa. And one of the things he brought to everyone's attention on a podcast the other day was in South Africa, like you mentioned, we have 5 major banks. In Kenya, they have, and I'm looking at the stats right now, they have 44 different banks. 31 of them are locally owned and 13 are foreign owned. You know, and so the question linked to that conversation is, do you think it's a case where a nation, where South Africans really need to educate themselves to a degree and investigate and research and find out more about why being agile and having an agile mindset is so important to business today?
Yeah. So if I can stretch that out a little bit, Kevin, just a little bit beyond agile, I think let's talk about the growth mindset and let's talk about the 4th industrial revolution.
Yeah.
Companies need to be relevant today to participate in the 4th industrial revolution, and a very good way of them being able to do that is becoming a lot more agile. However, they must make sure, and again, coming back to some of the stuff that we've spoken about, make sure that agile doesn't become a doing agile, which is actually going to slow you down rather than speed you up. This is all about speed. This is about speed. We literally are looking at 4 big measures that we measure in business agility. It's value. What value are you delivering to your customers, to your shareholders, to your employees, to your community? It's flow, which is speed. How quickly is work flowing through your system? It's quality. How many defects are we having over a period of time, and how are we reducing that through continuous innovation and learning? And then it's happiness of employees, happiness of customers, happiness of shareholders. So coming back, so that's what we want our customers to focus on. And if they don't, they're going to go, a lot of them will go out of business. We're already seeing the length of companies that stay on the Fortune 500, used to be 40, 50 years. Now it's down to 12 years, the average length of companies that stay in there. So if you don't, I always talk about 3 types of companies and individuals. There's those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that wonder what happened. And you don't want to be the wonder what happened part. But yes. to talk about then in terms of your question about individuals, one of the things that I always talk to individuals about is you also have to remain relevant in this new world of work. Automation is a given. Our company does what we call hyper-automation. So we look at where there are processes that we easily can be done by machines, which reduces the cost, increases the time, reduces errors to 0, etc. That's a given. Automation is here and it's going to grow. So there are jobs that are going to be replaced. People then say, but then what about unemployment? The World Economic Forum has done what's called the Jobs Report 2020 Jobs Report, and they have set out all of the new jobs that will come because of the 4th Industrial Revolution, and they have forecast that more jobs will be created by 4IR than will be lost. But we need to know what jobs they are, because 50% of the jobs that will be in place by 2025 don't even exist yet. So what are we doing as individuals to remain relevant in the new world of work? Instead of complaining that robots are taking my job, what am I doing to make sure that I remain? Robots can take the job of things that are easily repeatable, but what they can't, they don't have they don't have empathy. They don't have a creativity. A lot of these new, what used to be called soft skills. Are becoming the hard skills. So I keep on just saying to people, understand what jobs are in the future. Make sure you're relevant, no matter what your age. I don't know if you've come across Linda Smith. She runs a community called 50 Plus. And that's for everybody that's 50 years or older. And she's doing a great job of saying it doesn't matter what age you are, you can learn to code. You can become a Scrum Master. You can become a product owner. It doesn't matter what age you are, especially as we're moving towards that world of what we call the gig workers, where it's more about contractors than full-time employees. So yeah, I definitely think I'm excited about the future, and people need to make sure they're excited as well by being relevant.
So I mean, on this point, one of the things that one of the questions we have here is how does this agile approach link up to digital transformation? It's I find that you speak about automation and you kind of go, I still know of companies that they work off an Excel spreadsheet, and they're running very like wonderful, amazing companies. You're going, oh, how are you running off an Excel spreadsheet? Why isn't there an automated system doing this stuff, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How important is that? And do you think is it a case that people are just still too scared and they don't know or they don't trust what digital transformation can actually do for their businesses?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of interesting points around what you raised there, Kevin. First of all, a lot of people think digital transformation is just about putting more IT stuff and software into your business. Digital transformation at its core is about how do I better service the customers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of so as long as we're focusing on how do we better service the customer, so we developed what we call the impact model, which literally talks about how you connect everything that happens within a business with the center focus being the customer. At the end of the day, you talk about Excel spreadsheets, and I'll come back to that just now. I'm still surprised at how many businesses, very successful big businesses, don't have a customer experience person in the C-suite at the executive level. How many big companies still haven't done personas and customer journey maps and customer empathy maps, et cetera, et cetera. So customer, big focus, that's what your digital transformation should focus on. So let's go back to the automation part and also how that links into Agile. So the automation part, and I need to be, I'm gonna be a little bit careful here because again, there are certain jobs that will most probably, like you've got your people that work on the wine farms and your farm laborers, and so we need to be certain that when we say be relevant into the future, we need to understand that a lot of jobs in Africa are still fairly menial, labor-intensive jobs, and I'm not sure how the 4IR will play around that, because we need to upskill those people that are in those jobs to become more digitally savvy, if I can put it that way, and become more relevant in this new world. So I'm putting that as a prelude to what I'm about to say now, because I don't forget about that type of stuff. Yeah. But if I look at automation as a whole, and you're right, I mean, we recently, and we haven't got the results yet, but we recently bid on a piece of work. Obviously, not going to mention the company's name, but what you would think is most probably one of the most advanced companies in the telecommunications business within Africa.
Yeah.
And when we read the brief, we were shocked at how little they had done in terms of digital transformation, because a company like that should have been driving it. And so you've got lots of companies that have been extremely successful, almost despite themselves to some extent. But the exciting part for them is that they now have all of this almost valued, all of this big pot of money that they can be saving, first of all, by automating. So, your robots, the robots that we put, or the bots that we put into companies don't cost a heck of a lot. They'll pay themselves within 2 months in terms of the work they do, and they work 24/7. They don't make mistakes. They're just continuously going. So there's a lot of money to be saved. There's a lot of streamlining to be saved, and that comes now back to that agile where I spoke about the 4 main measures we use. So automation is going to help us deliver quicker. So digital transformation will help us deliver quicker to our customers, more quality. So we're building a lot of quality in, because the bots don't make mistakes, okay, unless they've been incorrectly configured. So so you're meeting speed, you're meeting the quality part. Happiness of employees and customers, you're definitely going to be meeting. Why am I meeting happiness of employees? Because people don't like doing, especially knowledge workers, don't like doing repetitive work. You know, they want to do creative work. They want to be innovative. And by then automating those jobs in the business that are just mind-numbingly repetitive, we align them to be more innovative.
Yeah. And you know, that sort of question sort of drives. You mentioned, you know, some of the top tier structures that still don't have certain positions in place. In terms of leadership, you know, so how does a company sort of take that on and kind of go, you know, the leaders in how they approach this really need to get on board with what that means to the business. Why is it important that leadership starts this and really gets on board?
Yeah. So I think again, and also coming back to your earlier question about COVID-19, I think that the first reaction from leaders was almost like a cut and freeze, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking, I think South African businesses actually were, I commend a lot of South African businesses for not doing the cut and freeze, like, for example, in America, where we suddenly saw tens upon tens of millions of people losing their jobs overnight. But COVID-19 brought this to the fore, where you're now suddenly playing in a whole different world. I do a series, you know, I do webinars and I call it the new abnormal, because today's world is not normal. It's different. Companies are doing differently. You know, some companies that are doing well now weren't doing well in the past. Companies that were doing well in the past are not doing so well now. So you're looking at, you know, I think diversified banking companies are going to need to become more focused on what they do instead of trying to be everything to everybody, because they're going to have all of these competitors. Your airline industry is obviously, you know, like really taken a hit. So those type of leaders have got the pressure where they need to change. And those are the easier companies to work with, because they're saying, my God, you know, if I don't change, I'm going to be out of business, and therefore I need to change. And they're the easy guys to work for. The more difficult guys to work for is where they're still making billions of rand of profit every year. And it reminds, I mean, again, when I used to work with someone, well, I know again won't mention that, but a big mining company in the early sort of 2001, 2002, and we used to say to them, you know, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to save A, B, and C a year. And they say, but you know, we're making $10 billion a year profit. What's a couple of extra $100,000, you know, saving? I say, but surely it's your job to save that extra couple of hundred of thousands or whatever. But they didn't have the pressure on them. So the leadership issue is a critical issue. If the leaders don't see the need to change, you're going to find it very difficult to change them. Also, one of the big banks that's been pretty successful in Agile, they also drove this whole Agile is only part of IT and the digital technology part of their business. And then after about 3 years of spending millions and millions of rand on training and, you know, Agile tools and whatever, you know, the CEO said to them, I'm not seeing any ROI. I've spent all this money on Agile. And the head of digital said, well, you will never see ROI until you as an executive team are part of this process. And fortunately enough for him, the CEO said, you're 100% right. And so now he and all of his, you know, C-suite people have their own Agile coach. They have their own what we call enterprise visibility room, where they're able to track exactly how they're doing, where the work's happening, etc. But yeah, these things, Kevin, it takes time. We've recently started with a client who we first met 18 months ago. Again, another one of the big financial institutions. 18 months ago, they said, yeah, we definitely want to go this business agility route. We spoke to them. 18 months later, we've now started. I mean, that's 18 months that have been lost, you know, and they've been wanting to do it the whole time. So the wheels turned and turn around, and I guess COVID has put pressure on a lot of people to do that. So, you know, for us, that's been good from a business sense. But yeah, again, that whole leadership thing, you know, it's Agile needs to be driven from the top into the business. It's a bottom-up, top-down approach, definitely. But if it isn't getting the understanding and the support from the leaders in the business, then it's eventually not going to be successful, because, you know, at a stage, your agile transformation in many instances also takes anywhere between 1 to 5 years, depending on the size of your organization. People tend to get quite frustrated because even though you tell them that up front, leaders tend to get a bit frustrated and say, where's my results? Where's my results? Because remember, they've been driven by shareholders in many instances that are interested in this year's dividends, not in 5 years' time dividends. So they also have their pressures. But yeah, it's one of the offerings we've recently launched is what we call Agile Super Squads, which we say if we've got the buy-in from your C-suite at the top level, we will have you up and running with Agile in 3 months, where it's been integrated into your business. Wow. Your internal people will have been given the ability to do this. We can walk away and only come back every couple of months and do a little bit of a chat with you guys, but we know we can implement it within 3 months. But we need your buy-in at a leadership level that you're going to give it its full support.
Yeah.
So we've got that offering, by the way. We haven't had any takers yet, but we definitely know we can do it, and you know, it's maybe the way to go for some companies.
And what did you call it? You be Agile Squad.
No, Agile Super Squads.
Agile Super Squad. So guys, if you are listening to this, you definitely need to chat to Myles, so you can check out what the Agile Squad does. Squad.
Yeah. So we have some nice sort of visuals in the background of the superheroes and, you know, whatever it is. But it's not. It's literally taking what would normally take a company, say, 18 months to 3 years.
Yeah.
Squashing that in and saying, we reckon we can do this within 3 months. If you allow us to have not carte blanche, because, you know, that's not, but we've got a way of being able to do that within 3 months. So yeah, we hope that some companies take us up on that offer, because it will definitely get it going in a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Myles, if you could give us a bit of a summary of today's conversation and maybe leave us with 3 key points that we can, take away in the importance of what you want to share with the audience today, what would that be?
Yeah. So I think the thing in terms of a summary, the world, Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada at the World Economic Forum in 2018 said, the world is changing faster today than it's ever changed before, but today is the slowest it'll ever change into the future. I think that's number one. We have what's called Martek's law. Martek's law says that the rate of innovation has changed exponentially over the last 20 years. But the way that we manage businesses has changed logarithmically. So the way we manage businesses today hasn't changed much in the last 30 to 40 years. We still have our strategies, our balanced scorecards, siloed departments. You know, companies can tell me as much as they want. They haven't really changed a heck of a lot over the last. And that capability gap between how innovation is changing and how we manage businesses is growing bigger and bigger, and we need to bring that down. So business agility is a way of bringing that, closing that gap. We look at what we call customer seat at the table first. Your customer, you need to focus on your customer. That's what's great about Agile, is we're able to very quickly show value to our customers by continuously, demoing improvements in what we've done 2 weeks ago. So we're able to show that value to our customers. We're able to speed up the delivery to market. Again, if you're talking about the summary, Agile is frameworks help us, but they can also hinder us. It's much more about the mindset, and think about the brewery that I spoke about. I also, I don't have, my wife and I don't have children. We have 4 dogs. And I took my one dog to agile training when she was 1 year old. And that's agile. That's about how do you move? You know, you get a new challenge. How do you move? How quickly can you move? How quickly can you adapt? And that's what I do. So it's, again, you know, it's about, like we said, you know, it's not the big fish eating the small fish anymore. It's the fast fish eating the slow fish. And it's about how quickly and don't let your agile system slow you down rather than speed you up. And another thing I want to say about slowing down, many of our big companies have spent hundreds of millions of rands on their ERP systems like Oracle and SAP and, you know, whatever it is. In many instances, those legacy systems actually slow them down rather than help them speed up, because you've got to work within this big behemoth. So just for example, with org design in Agile, we talk about network virtual teams. But I still have to put a traditional hierarchy in place because it's got to fit into Oracle. So I've got to actually run a operational org design, and I've got to run a administrative org design because that's what Oracle wants of me. 3 things to take away. Again, and I'm most probably going to repeat myself. It's about being agile, so it's the mindset part. It's about being faster than your customers to deliver solutions, etc., etc. And it's about really releasing the innovative nature that your knowledge workers already have built into them, allowing them what we call psychological safety to innovate. You talk about fail fast, fail forward. So allow people to fail because that's the way they learn, but you move forward because you learned a new way of doing things. I think it was Thomas Edison, who I don't remember how many times, but I think it was 1,800 times.
Yes.
Failed to develop the light bulb, but he eventually developed it. We don't remember the 1,800 times we failed. Remember the one time he succeeded.
Yeah.
So definitely your workforce is a critical part. HR always demand what they say, I demand my seat at the table, at the executive table. I say to HR teams, you can actually set the table now, because it's the companies that have the best talent into the future that'll win, not the companies that have the best technology. Now that sounds odd, but it's built into each other, because if I don't have the best talent, I will by rights not have the best technology, because it's my talent that'll develop the technology at the end of the day. And so I think companies often forget about that part, about their people side.
People first. Yeah, I love that. Myles, if we want to get hold of you, what is the website? And obviously all the information that you've shared with us will go in the description boxes below, but where's going to be the quickest way for us to get hold of you?
Okay, so people can either phone me on 082-336-4850, or our website is beagile.co.za. And a lot of people will spell it Beagly or Beagle or whatever. So it's beagile.co.za. And then my email address is just mhopkins@beagile.co.za.
Fantastic. Myles, thank you for joining us for the lunchtime coaching segment today. I've learned a hell of a lot from this conversation. Guys, if you want to check it out, go to beagile.co.za, hit up Myles and find out more about that super squad he spoke about. And yeah, Myles, thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kevin. It'll be great to be on the show and really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Chat soon.
Cheers. Bye.